Paul Villa claimed that 10 years prior to photographing his first series of saucers in 1963, he had been contacted by extraterrestrials while he was working for the Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles. He was at Long Beach one day in 1953, a strong inclination suddenly came over him to go down to the beach. A feeling came over him that he did not understand at the time. There, he said, he met a man about 7 feet tall initially. Paul Villa was afraid and wanted to run away, but the man called him by name and told him many personal things about himself. Villa realized that he was communicating with a very superior intelligence, and then he became aware that this being was a spaceman. He knew everything I had in my mind and told me many things that had taken place in my life. He then told me to look out beyond the reef. I saw a metallic-looking disc-shaped object that seemed to be floating over the water. Then the spaceman asked me if I would like to go aboard the craft and look around. I said yes, and I went with him. Villa reported that the saucer occupants were human-like in appearance, though more refined in face and body. Also, they had an advanced knowledge of science, as evidenced by their craft and from the information given by them. Villa was informed that the galaxy to which our Earth belongs in, is as a grain of sand on a huge beach in relation to the unfathomable number of inhabited galaxies in the entire universe. Because of the aliens' technological advancement, their spaceships could penetrate the Earth's radar detection systems, so that they were picked up on our radar screens only when they chose to call attention to their presence in our skies. Their craft were constantly active around our planet, and more sightings and landings would take place to increase public awareness of their existence. They said that they were here on a friendly mission to help our people, that they had bases on the moon. And that Phobos, one of the 2 moons of Mars, is hollow and had been artificially constructed. That a superior intelligence governed the universe and everything in it. On June 16, 1963, Villa's space contacts telepathically told him to drive alone in his pickup truck to a site near the town of Peralta, about 15 miles south of Albuquerque. There, at 2 o'clock, he claimed to have seen a flying saucer which he estimated to be about 160 to 170 feet in diameter. But at an earlier estimate, he gave it as 70 feet in diameter. The ship posed and hovered at low altitudes, and at various distances, as Paul Villa took photographs, around by the trees, and sometimes showing his truck in the foreground. He used a Japanese-made bus, folding camera with a Roku f4.6 75mm lens, which I have examined, with 124 matte coated color film. Flying Saucer A, June 16, 1963. Two of the photos show the ship as it flipped on its side, with its lower part rotating. Apparently, according to Villa, to indicate that the space people had created an artificial gravity field around the craft, thus they remained completely comfortable no matter what altitude the craft assumed relative to a planet's surface. According to the late Coral and Jim Lorenzen of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. One of these images, photo number 3 in color, the plate fails to show the branches of a tree in front of the craft as the size looks 170, or even 70 feet in diameter as claimed, indicating that the craft might be a small fake. It could be the case, though I have been unable to establish this to my own satisfaction, working from enlargements I personally reproduced. Villa himself claimed that the branches of the tree were swaying from a huge rush of wind generated locally by the craft, which might have accounted for the apparent inconsistency. In other photos from this series, where nearby vegetation and also Villa's truck provide useful reference points, the saucer appears to be a large object at considerable distance from the camera, thus reducing the likelihood of fraud. Flying Saucer B, June 16, 1963. At one point, Villa said, the craft hovered about 300 feet over his truck and caused it to rise slowly into the air to 3 or 4 feet for a few minutes. Also, when the craft was about a quarter of a mile away, a flexible control rod could be seen, apparently probing the ground and trees at different angles and curving into different shapes. While this was going on, a small shiny remotely controlled sphere, 6 to 9 feet in diameter, exited from the main craft and disappeared behind the trees, then reappeared and shot off at terrific speed, while a reddish glowing color. When the craft hovered a few hundred yards away, according to Villa, between the treetops, the bottom section was tinted amber red, like hot metal, but the colors changed from a shiny chrome to a dull aluminum back to amber. At one point it became so bright, that it shone almost unbearably. As it passed over Villa's head, he felt not only heat from it but also a prickly or tingling sensation all over my body. Although the upper, dome structure of the craft could be turned independently from the lower section, Villa learned, it appeared to remain stationary during flight, while the lower section rotated at different speeds. It made a whirring noise that sounded something like a giant electric motor or generator. At other times it gave off either a buzzing pulsating noise, or it suddenly became totally silent as it moved about in different directions. Small spheres flew around the small flying saucer. At about 2:30, the craft landed on tripod legs, and 9 beautiful crew members, 5 men and 4 women disembarked through a previously invisible door. Villa said, that these beings ranged in height from 7 to 9 feet, and were well proportioned, immaculately groomed and dressed in tight-fitting one-piece uniforms. The color of their hair ranged from fiery golden to polished copper to black. Villa was told that they came from the constellation of Coma Berenices, many light years in distant. Coma Berenices is a constellation notable for the large number of galaxies it contains. In addition to communicating telepathically, they were also able to speak many of our languages. During the 90-minute conversation with Villa, they spoke in both English and Spanish, Villa's native tongue, but when conversing among themselves, they spoke in their own tongue, which sounded something like again, to Hebrew and Indian. Villa was informed that the craft operated as a mothership for 9 remotely controlled monitoring discs. Maneuvered from instrument panels inside the mothership, these could pick up imagery and sound from areas to which they were directed, and relay them back to monitors on control panels in the mothership. A remote viewing technology first described by George